Welcome to Viseland episode 6. We've got as many episodes as Michael Jordan has rings, so we keep doing it. And today we're actually going to do a very special episode where we're actually dedicating this episode to someone who's very good friends with our grandfather. That was Blazers founder Harry Glickman. He just passed away this past week at the age of 96. And in honor to kind of dedicate him, we're doing the 10 franchise-defining moments in Trailblazers history.
Yeah, just 10 of the great moments in honor of Harry Glickman. He was a great man. A huge reason why the Blazers came to Portland and have been such a successful franchise. Many really good playoff teams, of course, a really early championship ring into their history. They have that over many teams in the league, just when we're thinking off the top.
The NBA is definitely an aristocracy. There's definitely kind of, there's a top load at the top, and the Blazers are on that list. And I think something with just to give some background on our relationship with Harry and the Blazers is our grandfather grew up, they were good friends, camp, high school, college. And our grandparents pretty much went to every single Trailblazers home game from 1970, the founding of the team, till about 1995 when they didn't like the new seats they got at the Rose Garden. They didn't have the same view, so they decided to. But that's another story for another day. But basically, we were born and bred into Rip City. I mean, we grew up in Toronto, but the Raptors didn't really come around until 1994. They didn't start to that 95-96 season. So at that point, we'd already been indoctrinated into basketball, and we gained so much knowledge of the game from our grandparents, and that was the Blazers. And those were guys that we all, could recite their names on that first name basis: Clyde, Terry, Jerome, Buck, Cliffy, and so on. So we're really going to take this time to really just appreciate the Blazers. And if you know their history, there's been some great moments, and there's also some moments that test you, but we're going to talk about a little bit of both, with the 10 moments we feel really define the history of this illustrious franchise. So we're going to start it off with the number 10, and that is the 2007 NBA draft.
Yeah. That was a draft where we were jumping and screaming as soon as we heard the lottery. And the one name that really stood out, there were two names at the top, and everybody just was thinking of this one name, and that was Odin. Greg Oden. And it was between the two guys who were in a tier by themselves were Greg Oden and Kevin Durant. And it seems that retroactively there were more people in favor of Kevin Durant. But if you go back to the time, that wasn't necessarily the case.
Yeah, I do believe if you have a time machine, you go back to Portland in 2007, there was definitely a good Oden to Durant mix. Durant was very skinny at the time. He was a volume shooter, but he wasn't as deadly as he is. It was still a great sport in Texas, but I don't think
he was greatly efficient in college. He had an amazing if he wasn't College Player of the Year, he was at least in that race, and he was a first-team All-American. But Greg Oden was also a first-team All-American.
With the messed up wrist at Ohio State too, and that was the other thing.
Shooting free throws with his offhand.
Because he had that, but again, he was that big guy, and it's kind of in retrospect, a curse of the Blazers is the love for the big guy, and Greg Oden, fit that bill. And again, the optimism was super high because the Blazers had that first pick, but the Blazers were also in this kind of rebuild mode where they had some good pieces.
Mm-hmm.
They had some good young pieces that they can, add this new number one pick to really, kind of elevate the franchise to another level. And I think, they did make those good playoff runs after, but obviously Greg Oden, injuries never really materialized. And again, just for some more context, our grandmother never let Michael individually live it down, the fact that the Blazers didn't take Kevin Durant.
Yeah. It was my fault. And it would have been my fault if Kevin Durant had left and gone to the Warriors anyway. If you were on the Blazers,
also probably been at fault with our grandmother, but
but no, Kevin Durant ended up being everything that people expected him to be and more. Greg Oden was known as, unfortunately, as Mr. Glass, and had injury issues right off the bat, which didn't seem to be there at the time they were drafting him. I know some people said his medicals, showed some signs, but I don't think that was necessarily the case. And the worst thing that we had heard about Greg Oden, it seemed in high school, he had no real lingering injuries. We know that he had one leg longer than the other, though I think there have been other players that had that and have had NBA careers and not faced nearly the injury issues that Oden ended up facing. He had the wrist injury. That was the one thing. He didn't necessarily have like foot and knee issues that he ended up having. It just was something that ended up happening immediately. It happened in summer league, and he just
he sits out that his first year in the league.
Oh yeah,
he sits out. But then again, you look back now and you're like, well, Blake did it. Blake sat out that first year.
Embiid got out his first 2 years.
2 years. So it's like, sometimes again, it's just it's luck of the draw in basketball, in life, and Greg didn't have that. Kevin Durant would have been incredible. To add him to the mix with Brandon Roy, Lamarcus Aldridge. We probably wouldn't have seen a Nicholas Batum in that situation. He probably would have been odd man out there. But I mean, it would have been an amazing core to see, but wasn't meant to be.
Yeah. Well, yeah, having Batum, you figured Oden, Aldridge, Batum, and Roy, and then whoever you plugged in at point guard. That was a core. That was a really great core. And I know Portland had a fantastic record when Brandon, Greg Oden, and Aldridge all played together as well, which, kind of leaves you thinking, what if? In Greg Oden's third season, when he started off that season, he had some really standout moments.
Absolutely.
But yeah, in retrospective, Durant is – I think also with the way things are evaluated now and not as much relying on big guys to build your franchise.
Oh, totally. I mean,
Greg Oden was a player who had really rare ability for a center. He had a dominant performance. He was great all season, and then had a dominant performance in the championship game against a massive Florida starting line.
Deep front court at Florida with Horford and
Al Horford and Joakim Noah. One of the standout games, if you go and check during his third season, he has this huge game against Joakim Noah. 24 points, 12 rebounds, 4 blocks. Like, it just seemed like he was really coming into his own. Then he gets a non-contact injury, and the rest is history.
Yeah, it's just one of those things you want to see that number one pick, materialize, and that's just an unfortunate thing for the – not that this was the last time it's – the most recent time it's happened for the Blazers. It wasn't the first.
Yeah. No, and we'll see that more during this list. But they've had their share of solid picks as well. But, yeah, 2007 – definitely a defining moment. Unfortunately, not in the positive.
Not in the positive way. But let's move on to number 9. And I think this was something that was positive at the time. I mean, it ended in defeat, but that was the 1992 NBA Finals for the Blazers.
Mm-hmm.
You look at them going against Chicago. The Blazers had lost in the finals 2 years prior, 1990. Pretty similar roster, but they did make that trade. They ended up getting Danny Ainge. So they bring him in, and it's it's a deep team, and after 4 games they're tied 2-2. Mm-hmm. So this series was something that they could have done, but obviously there's this guy. His name was Michael Jordan. People might have heard of him. Series ends up 4-2. Blazers in defeat, but really the Blazers, their second time in 3 years winning the West, coming into the finals, looking like they've really kind of had this core team that's going to be. At this time, you're hoping a finals mainstay. Obviously they were a playoff mainstay, but obviously 1995 they end up, dismantling the team. They bring in Carlos Samo in 94. PJ Carlos Samo was a new coach. They dismantled the team. But you look at this 91-92 team, very, pretty deep, solid team. You got Danny Ainge, and then you got this, off the bench is kind of your spark plug along with Clifford Robinson, still early in his career, but he made the All-Star game, just a couple years later. We have this starting lineup, it's Terry Porter, Clyde Drexler, Jerome Kersey, Buck Williams, Kevin Duckworth. That's who I think of, and those are those names, and these are those people that are so ingrained in my memory as Trailblazers, regardless of what they went on to do after. So it's just sad that they can never get over that next hump, because obviously Michael Jordan happened to be in the way this time.
Yeah. Well, Clyde Drexler played really well in this series, and then you go and look at Michael Jordan, and he was just absolutely.
Yeah, you look at
as you saw in The Last Dance, he took the kind of comparisons between he and Clyde very personally, and Michael Jordan laid an absolute whooping.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's like it's 2-2 after 4 games, so you're like, oh, okay, sweet, here we are, and then 4-2 series end. So it's just one of those tough things. And then of course this Blazer team, well, the Blazers period, but this they never get back to the finals since then. But it was a defining moment, and just again, like it made it seem like we were that team in the West, or we had the potential to be that team in the West.
You also had so many guys in their primes for the Blazers as well. Like if you look at the ages, they lined up really well. The only 2 guys from that 7-man kind of core that they had that were over 30 in as of this series between the Blazers and the Bulls were Buck Williams and Danny Ainge. And then you had Clyde was, I believe, 29 years old, Terry Porter, 28, Kersey, 29. So, yeah, like it was kind of getting to the point where I think we kind of figured out that these guys were either getting to being past their prime or kind of at that moment. But, yeah, great team, just ran into even more of a powerhouse and ran into a player who was absolutely possessed. And Scottie Pippen had really come into his own as well, as you see in this series.
No, totally. It's it was a tough one, but on the plus side, I can look back and say I still have some of the merch from the '92 NBA Finals that I have saved throughout the years that I'm going to hand down to my son when he's able to wear them. So, it wasn't a total loss, because he's gonna have some really cool retro threads to wear. But the number 8 moment is something that I think it's there because it's something that kind of happened in passing at the time, but I think it's got, obviously the longest lasting legacy, and that is a fateful game in February 8th, 1971. Blazers are playing the Lakers, and Jim Barnett on the Blazers takes a shot that at the time you would say, where NBA was very much about getting it close to the bucket to get those, there wasn't a lot of long distance shooting going on. There wasn't a 3-point line. Jim Barnett puts up a shot, he makes it, and Bill Shomley of the Trailblazers, the longtime announcer, says the words "Rip City" for the first time.
Are you sure it's February 8th?
Yeah, that was the date. What date?
1971?
Yeah.
Because I see February 7th.
Oh, that's what it said on Wikipedia.
Well, shocking, because they didn't play on February 8th, I believe.
Then it was February 7th.
Or was
it February 18th? Sorry.
February 18th. Okay.
I was off. My bad. I was trying to memorize the dates. I was never good at that in history class. Either way, 1971.
Triple header for the Blazers.
First time you hear those words, "Rip City," and if you
Rip City, baby.
If you follow the Blazers, if you know anything about the city of Portland, Rip City has stuck.
Yeah. And what's the meaning? Give me the Urban Dictionary definition.
I mean, there's so many things that come. I mean, it's like, it's kind of the ball going through the
ripping the nets.
Yeah, ripping the nets. The Blazers were scoring a lot of points. That's kind of the urban myth legend. But it's just something that Portland is kind of embraced.
It really was an urban legend in their initial season in the NBA.
Well, no, it's just the kind of thing.
Winning was hard to come by.
Yeah, well, it's the Blazers kind of started off. They didn't win the coin flip in their inaugural season to basically get the grand prize of Kareem. Mm-hmm. So they kind of needed something to and it's just been something that the team's identified with. They have plenty of songs about it. You can go on YouTube. I always recommend Rip City Rap City from the early 90s with a lot of the Blazers rapping. It's what they call the program. The program is Rip City Magazine. They used to actually have a mail subscription magazine, Rip City. And it's just something that the city's embraced. And it's funny. You look at Twitter, and they always do those hashtags. All the teams have their trending things. And it's like, there's so many of them that have been invented in the past year or two, or that don't make, full grammatical sense, like We the North.
Yeah.
To throw a shot at our home team.
Well, that's more, I think, like Game of Thrones-ish.
Yeah, kind of thing. That's recent, but this is something that it's been there since 1971. It's here today. Kids go to Blazer games and are Cypher Rip City. You see it on the in the jerseys, the shorts, everything. So it's just a pivotal moment for the franchise. It kind of gave them a bonding identity, and I think that's what like the biggest thing about that is.
Oh yeah. Like every team needs a rallying cry, and I think that's always been kind of a big thing, and it's always great for marketing, great for unification, and when the inaugural pick of the Blazers at number 8, Geoff Petrie, ends up being a really good pick.
Oh yeah, no, like he was solid, but if you win that coin flip and you get
not a lot of winning, but he was just a really solid scorer.
But you win all those coins, because that's the crazy thing about the lottery. It's like, it's so crazy, but that's like, it used to just be a coin flip. It could be you or it could be somebody else.
50-50.
And sometimes, especially
however they measure the heads and tails or whatever.
Yeah, and especially from talking to Harry, from talking to Harry about some of these things, it's like the Blazers are sitting on a call. There's a coin flip happening in New York City, and you're just hoping it lands your way. And a lot of the times, unfortunately, it didn't.
Yeah. Yeah, the Blazers, a history of not the best bounces.
Yeah, but the level of love is there. Then number 7 is going to be something, we're going to look back at another draft, but this time we're going to look at it from a very
positive. Let's have the year before.
So before Greg Oden, we get into the 2006 draft, and this is during a period where the Blazers are extremely, I don't know if infuriating is the right word. They basically trade every 2 seconds during the draft. Like, they can't make a pick. They got to, trade the second pick for so they're trading all over the place. And so they end up drafting this guy, Tyrus Thomas, at number 4. And you're like, you'd watch him at LSU. He's super athletic. You're like, oh. But then they traded for this guy who they got drafted at number 2, Lamarcus Aldridge.
Who's this guy, Lamarcus Aldridge?
Yes, on that trade. 10 times. 1,000 times out of 1,000. So yeah, so they end up getting Lamarcus Aldridge, who becomes, Zach Randolph's kind of on his way out of Portland, and Lamarcus Aldridge becomes the post player for the Blazers until he leaves. A couple years ago. 2018. What year did he leave?
I think it was 2017, but yeah, here, let me look at him quickly. He left. So it was 2015-16 he goes to.
2015-16. But again, that's a 10-year, that's pretty much a 10-year.
2015, yeah.
As the post player, as the go-to guy.
Guys.
And also someone who kind of bridged the gap between the next guy that we're going to talk about and Damian, as being that guy. And then later, a little later, still in the lottery of that draft, the Blazers make a trade with Minnesota for Randy Foye?
So Minnesota drafts Brandon Roy as the 6th pick in the draft. And the Blazers had actually traded for that 7th pick. They traded Sebastian Telfair for the 7th pick. It was a trade with Boston. And so the Blazers take Randy Foye 7. And then they make the trade with Minnesota. And Randy Foye was somebody with a lot of momentum. Let me actually break down a little bit of what this draft was like. So Lamarcus Aldridge had played Tyrus Thomas in his last game at Texas. And LSU went on this really nice tournament run. And I wouldn't say Tyrus Thomas smashed Lamarcus Aldridge, but he definitely got the better of him. And, whatever March brings as far as draft and everything like that, it sent Tyrus Thomas's stock skyrocketing. And he was a great athlete, people just kind of wondered about his game. Like
he's a redshirt freshman at LSU.
Yeah.
Still super raw. I mean, he redshirt redshirting in basketball not always.
They wondered about his shooting. They wondered about his overall feel. And Lamarcus was seen as a player who kind of had a new age game that at the time wasn't as appealing as it is now. And they wondered if he was soft and all these other things. So I remember, and then Randy Foye was seen as like one of the hot prospects, and people were comparing him to like Dwayne Wade.
Oh, people thought he was like going to be the best player in the draft. Like I definitely think.
Yeah, and people thought he had a chance. And Brandon Roy had this fantastic senior season at University of Washington. I think if you looked at just like players, you could say Adam Morrison was a better like college player, but Brandon Roy certainly had a lot of things going on. There were rumors of him having knee issues. That was a big thing with Brandon Roy. But so they make those trades. Stephen A. Smith at the time was doing the draft for ESPN. And then he goes on TV like the next day and he denounces the Portland Trailblazers draft. He flips his shit. He is like, I'm never talking about the Blazers again. Why are you blah, 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 blah. Tyrese Thomas is the best player in the draft. Blah, 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 blah. Like so on and so forth with this guy. And I loved it because he was getting kind of demoted each year in the draft. And I thought it was due to his bad takes. But then now he's like the highest paid person in ESPN history to have really stupid and bad takes, yet be entertaining. So at the time, you always thought of them, or at least I did, I thought of them as experts, but they're entertainers.
Yeah.
And most of them, since they have so many sports that they're covering, have very little clue about the NBA draft or basketball. And that's something we realized with Stephen A. Smith. I think he paid Google and the internet, how LeBron works on his body every year and spends like millions of dollars on his body? Stephen Smith spends millions of dollars trying to hide his bad draft takes. And
I think
obviously something I'm kidding about, but yeah.
I think everyone doesn't bury their bad draft takes because that's the thing with a take. You have it at the time and you got to, you went all in, but unfortunately.
We need a Stephen A. Smith draft board.
he lost on that one because I think, but yeah, that draft was great. And don't forget later in the draft, number 30, the Blazers draft, Joel Freeland.
Amazing story. A Chris Boucher level story of Joel Freeland.
He's still
bagging groceries and then balling like a ma.
Yeah, and he, played for the, was on the Blazers. Let's not go nuts there. But, community ambassador. I saw him at the airport once. I can't complain about that. But Brandon Roy was really, the heart and soul of what this next generation of the Blazers. The Blazers really, since the 90s, they had that era where
he was
the late 90s, early 2000s where they were going. But that was, a tough team for fans to really, there was this kind of fans versus community thing with Rasheed and Bonzi Wells and a lot of those guys where it's like Brandon Roy was finally like a player that the Blazers fans could get around again. And Marcus. And so it was just a great
– He was just so good.
Yeah. And again, didn't Kobe say he thought he was like the second best two guard in the league? Brandon Roy was really doing so much. And again, he wasn't.
Dwayne Wade was, but yeah, Brandon Roy was up there.
But no,
maybe in the West.
Yeah, perennial all-star, and also he did have the knees, but he wasn't the most athletic, but he was athletic enough. He could handle the ball, take it up the court. It's just, we'll get into the next number 6 because that'll also involve, we're going to follow back up on Brandon Roy in the playoffs 2011.
Yeah.
This is, very defining because he was great.
He had a great game. That was, I think, the ultimate thing.
Yeah, he led this comeback.
Yeah. He had this great game because he had all the injury issues and people were kind of thinking he might be done and, we weren't sure. He missed a ton of games and then he comes back. He's kind of, playing sparingly. And, he's just not himself. He's not himself. That's the big thing. He's not himself. And then in the start of the series against Dallas, he's really not himself. He's not playing as much. It just looks like instead of a guy who at the time was I think he was 26 years old, and he came back and it looked like he was like 10 years older than that. Like that was the big thing with him. And the Blazers like lose the first 2 games pretty handily. And then over the next 2 games, he comes back and he's looking like the Brandon Roy of old. And he just does some amazing things.
Yeah, he had so much heart and he just gave so much.
Yeah.
And so I just think it was just so defining that he kept playing, he gave it his all for the Blazers.
Yeah. And then at least it was game 4. So he in game 3 and 4 of the 2011 series against Dallas, after they lose the first 2 games, Brandon averages 20 per game, is +7 in 24 minutes in the game 3 5-point win, and then has this huge 24-point game in game 4, and they win by 2 points. And just a great moment. It was just so nice to see Brandon Roy playing like the Brandon Roy that we had seen the few years prior. And, it just was an absolute shame that his knees just kind of gave out on him. And he had just signed a huge contract. Yeah. He certainly looked like he was one of the rising stars in the NBA. And then even in his early play with Portland, and if you go back into the draft, it's hard not to even choose Brandon Roy higher than Portland ended up selecting him, even given his shortened career, totally. Just for his peak.
Oh yeah, his peak was so high, and he really matured quickly in the league. Like he didn't really have a lot of, like he became the leader of the Blazers like from the jump.
Yeah, and it was definitely like, if you go back and look at the 2006 draft, it was a bad draft, but the Blazers got 2 of the best players in the draft. Yeah. And then I think if you go and do a redraft of 2006, Lamarcus Aldridge is probably the guy you take number 1. Kyle Lowry certainly up there as well, but yeah, Lamarcus has been a great player as well. Had some really good seasons with the Blazers. Was excellent playing next to Robin Lopez, and you just kind of dream of what everything would have looked like if they had a healthy young core.
No, totally.
Because they were like all aligned and aged really well. It's just an absolute devastation.
They were young but mature. Like it really had a lot going. It's a lot of what could have been with that Blazer team. As much as every Blazer team has a little bit of what could have been, I think that early 2010s, 2000s teams really has the most what could have been. But then let's move along to number 5, and this is something that was very recent. And, it's because of what happened with those other Blazer teams that we ended up getting this guy, Damian Lillard from Weber State, who a lot of people hadn't really heard of. Small school guy, and I'm talking about the 2019 playoffs, first round, Oklahoma City, deciding moment. Paul George steps up, wants a piece of Dame, gives him basically, if you give Damian Lillard any space, you're giving him too much space.
Yeah.
And Damian just pulls up, hits that thing right in his face, waves him goodbye, steps off. Like that was just such an insanely exciting rallying moment for the Blazers and the fans, and just like Dame's cold. He's a cold shooter anywhere on the
50 points on the game.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Well, that's the thing, and especially about today's NBA too, with guys like Steph and Damian Lillard. It's like no place on the court is off limits.
Oh yeah.
Like 20 years ago, you would have been like, "That's the dumbest shot." Like, why are people? Yeah. It's like they pull from like the logo. You're like, "Oh, sweet, go for it." Yeah, another one.
Well, as Paul George said, it's a bad shot. But the problem with it could be a bad shot. Probably the percentages of that shot extremely low. But he made the shot, Paul.
It's also a worse shot if it's a bad shot if I'm taking it. But Damian Lillard hits it at a pretty good rate. I mean,
well, let me be real. That is my shot. It's an amazing shot if I'm taking it.
That's your shot, but it's not mine.
Yeah.
But
no, your shot is I exactly know what your shot is. It might have been Dame's shot against Houston.
That was a great one too. But then I think this one also had that super exciting, and then the Blazers actually had a pretty good playoff run that was unexpected, because I always feel like nobody really bets on the Blazers ever, but especially outside of Portland, and it's like, they faced a tough series against Denver, but they won.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, have to go against Golden State.
Ugh.
Ended that run, but Damian Lillard just brings this certain excitement to Portland that the Blazers really need.
Yeah, the confidence. Well, he played so exceptionally well during the Oklahoma City series against Russell Westbrook, who he has this kind of little rivalry with, completely outplayed him. And the Blazers usually struggle with, wings the caliber of Paul George, who had a tremendous 2018-19 season and is playing well. And, they're right in it. If the Blazers lose that game, or, let's say it goes to overtime, they lose, it's still a pretty wide open series. So yeah, Damian hitting that walk-off shot, waving goodbye. As we mentioned earlier, the Thunder are still doing a pretty good job of rebuilding. I know everybody made the joke of him waving goodbye to the Thunder's whole building process with Russell Westbrook and Paul George. But yeah, the Thunder come back and have a better season than the Blazers. I'd like to think in large part that's due to all of the injuries the Blazers have suffered. But yeah, an amazing part in Damian Lillard's Portland history thus far, which has been so impressive. Was listening to the Chad Ford and John Hollinger 2012 redraft today. And if you were to redraft 2012, I think you still go with Anthony Davis at 1, but Damian Lillard now the number 2 in a pretty strong draft. And he's been one of the better point guards in the NBA. Yeah, it was a wonderful moment. I unfortunately didn't get to see it live, but I remember I was boarding a plane. I had gone to Prague last year, boarding the plane, and I talked to you, Jason, right before I'm boarding, and you tell me at halftime I think he had 32.
Yeah. Oh, he was
something like absurd.
And
he was just going off.
He's one of those players that when he is on, he is so deadly. And it was just the coldest shot. And there'd been, he had a game winner 2009. Brandon Roy had a game winning shot as well, and his history against Houston in a playoff series. But just to end on a walk off is like so strong. And yeah, Damian Lillard, he's just one of those guys. I really hope he spends his entire career with the Blazers and gets them to that level that we hope they can. But super, super exciting, and probably one of my favorite things. Like if you're in a bad mood, you watch that clip on YouTube. Like it's one of those or just Damian's face when he's kind of piled on everybody. Like you look at those things and
man,
it brightens your day.
Yeah, he's so cold. And then as soon as I go from Prague to Amsterdam on my way back to Portland, and I call my friend and he tells me about it, and I go and look it up.
Yeah,
incredible! Like
we're so lucky to be
the best news once I had landed, and this same friend, I actually had the chance to go and watch a game with him. There was a makeup game that I had missed due to a snow day. I wanted to see Cleveland, LeBron James play Portland. It was snowing. There was no way I could get to the game. When it snows in Portland, in certain parts,
everything's done.
And that was the case. So they gave us this makeup game. Damian just happens to score 26 points in the first quarter and 59 points on the game. Missing free throws at the end where he possibly could have gotten 60 and 61. But he, just some incredible performances from Damian. And last year's playoffs, certainly a pivotal moment in Portland Trailblazer history, and something to really look forward to, even with the tough times they may be having this year.
Yeah, well, let's just say 2020 shit for everybody. Let's focus on 2021. Hopefully the Blazers somehow rig the lottery and get a good or do something. Not that this is the strongest draft ever, but
probably not happening with this draft.
But exciting things like having a guy like Damian Lillard win, lose or draw, he's giving it his all each time he goes out there for your team, and someone I hope remains with the Blazers for life. So number 4 is something that was a very defining moment of my early teenage years of testing how loud I could scream or lose my mind. And there was also a little bit of a division in our family at the time, because Michael he's in recovery now, but he's what's known as a Shaq addict. So Shaq was his guy. So anywhere Shaq was, that was Michael's favorite team, including Phoenix, Miami, Boston, the rec center team, whatever other teams he played on. But Michael liked the Lakers. Obviously, by birth, we are a Trailblazers family. So I'm talking about the 2000 Western Conference Finals.
Yes.
So we look at the landscape of the league at this time. Michael Jordan is gone, or so we think. But at the time, it looks like he's
had left.
He had left. Also, the 99 season was kind of shortened by the lockout. San Antonio wins the championship, but everything's up for grabs in the league. And
the Blazers get Scottie Pippen.
The Blazers get Scottie Pippen, and the Lakers had not yet
to a strong team.
Yeah, the Lakers had Shaq, they had this young kid named Kobe. They trade for Glenn Rice, but they hadn't made a finals yet either. They'd lost in they'd lost in the playoffs. They hadn't done it. And let me just read you. I'm going to give you 10 names on this Trailblazer team. Rasheed Wallace, Scottie Pippen, Steve Smith, Damon Stoudemire, Arvydas Sabonis, Detlef Schrempf, Brian Grant, Greg Anthony, Bonzi Wells, Jermaine O'Neal.
Yeah.
That is 10 guys.
Mm-hmm.
And then Stacey Augmon is the 11th, and he played 59 games that year. These are but that's like a 10-man rotation, 10 dudes who can play. You're Rasheed made the All-Star team that year. He's kind of the guy on the Blazers. Damon's the point. Damon obviously is my favorite player. You can see I have his jersey up here every week, but you got Damon, is kind of that the point guard for a lot of the game. Usually in some fourth quarter situations, they're bringing in Greg Anthony. You have Brian Grant, Detlef Schrempf. You have Sabonis, so you have another big dude. Not he obviously never in the same league as Shaq, but at least you don't want me going up against Shaq. You need another guy who's at least big. So you got 7'3" Sabonis. And Sabonis also offensively, not because he also can't run up and down the court. He was out there on the 3-point line, so he's kind of,
he's bringing Shaq out of paint. Yeah.
Yeah, this was before, illegal defense rules in the NBA were still in play. So it's he's dragging your big guy out too. So they're doing a lot of things, and it gets to this point where the Blazers are a good team. We're the highest salary team in the league because we had the we don't care philosophy. Let's just put money.
That Trader Bob.
Yeah. So it was a good, super deep, good team. Did all the fans in the city and community love them? Debatable.
Yeah. But
they were winning games, and they're doing it. And then it gets to Game 7. They are up how many points?
I think it was 16.
Yeah, and I think of this one moment with Kobe, and he drives to the middle of the lane, and everyone has to collapse because it's Kobe in the paint, and he just throws the ball up in the air, and of course Shaq just gets it and just throws it down super hard. And I think the Blazers were still honestly ahead at this point.
No, they weren't.
They weren't. It was already transition. Because either way, I just remember seeing that and be there's no chance. The Blazers can't win.
Yeah. No, that was the point where that was when the game truly was
the Lakers could have walked off the court at that point, and they still would have won the game.
back pointing at his kid in the stand and everything.
Yeah, like, so frustrating because again, it was just we were so close. We could have gone to the final because again, the Pacers were in the finals. Like, was that the strongest team of all time?
No. Oh, if the Blazers had gone to the finals, they would have won.
Yeah, like you look at how deep this Blazer team was.
Whoever was coming out of the West was likely
winning because the West was where the competition was. You still had, I mean, Utah was still Stockton Malone. You had San Antonio, Duncan and Dave Robinson. So
the Blazers gave the Lakers a better series than the Pacers did.
Yeah, and so it's just that moment of the Blazers being right there. They were so.
The one thing with Dunleavy is when you have this much talent, it's really hard to split it all up. And the thing that I would always notice is as soon as Scottie Pippen went to the bench, that team wasn't the same. Like, Scottie Pippen may not have been the best player on the team. I think it was Rasheed.
It was Rasheed.
It's like, you look at Rasheed's numbers during the series, like, he was great. But, Scottie Pippen, it seems like analytic-wise, like, not off the charts. But, yeah, so it was like Rasheed, Smitty, and Pippen. And then, so some of the Blazers' best players at this point, you have Smitty's 30, Scottie's 34, and Sabonis is 35. Strumpf is 37. So you don't really have, like, a huge window at this point either.
Oh, no, totally.
Come to find out.
This is a team that makes a lot more sense in, like, in a video game, like in a simulation.
Yeah. But, oh, my God. Like, the depth of that team was off the charts. A really, really tough out, and it took them missing infinite shots in Game 7 to lose to the Lakers. And, it was just really a photo finish. Amazing series. And I like the Lakers. I loved Kobe. I love Kobe. But you just every time they show him that you have to show that clip. It just has to be played, and I go back in my mind of like, I remember betting my math teacher at the time $20 that the Blazers would win. Yeah, your math teacher, the degenerate gambler.
He let me off the hook by buying him a slice of pizza for $2. So really, I got to save the 18. But like, I was so confident because to me, I didn't think there weren't other teams that could win. It had to be the Blazers because I've just had so much Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
And like, even though in the back of my mind,
teacher betting his student $20.
It was a different
era. Absolutely absurd.
It was a different era, and he was a good guy, and you know what? He
was a good guy.
He let me settle for the slice of pizza the next day for the $2, but I wanted that really, really badly, and didn't happen. And then after that, the Blazers, of course, like, are just a
lot of first-round exits right after.
A lot of first-round exits, never could really get it going. And eventually they trade Jermaine O'Neal for Dale Davis. They get Sean Kemp way past his prime, but like still have like the highest salary in the league. So this is like a very defining moment because it was kind of like this was a chance, and then that moment went very quickly. They had to make a transition, and unfortunately, they were kind of down and out until that 2006 draft that we referenced earlier. It's like those were several frustrating years until they could, get Brandon Roy, Lamarcus, rebuild a core, but it was such a deep team, and I just, even the next couple of years, they still brought in like Steve Kerr. They brought a lot of random guys that were like older, but like decent players or people you didn't mind seeing on the court. But they just can never actually win.
They went all in, and it just didn't end up getting to the end result that they had hoped for. But still, God, what a series! Like, incredible series. Incredible year for the Blazers, and it just
like one day I'll go back and watch Game 7 again. It's like very difficult.
Yeah,
it's
27-year-old Shaq, and Shaq that season was just an absolute monster.
Again, nobody's
Led the
guarding
NBA in
Shaq.
scoring. Nobody was close to Shaq that season, just as an individual players. The Blazers played him really well.
Because we had a lot of guys who could throw out.
Well below his like season scoring average and efficiency. And then he that year led the NBA in scoring, was playing like almost like in the, I think, low 40s minutes per game, which if you look now is just kind of unheard of as well. And then he should have been unanimous MVP, but some idiot, I'm sorry to say idiot, voted for Allen Iverson when he clearly didn't deserve it that year, won it the next year. But yeah, Shaq was
Shaq, Kobe.
Amazing. And then Kobe had become one, maybe like, if he wasn't the second best player in the league at that point, he was.
No, totally. He was that guy once when Shaq, would get hurt or, sit out a game. Kobe was the dude, and, had Glenn Rice was a little past his day, but still, contributed. And it was just, it wasn't meant to be. And the Blazers never got to form a dynasty. The Lakers obviously did.
Repeated.
And so that's it right there. But number 3, also again coming back to the playoffs, coming back to the some heartbreak, is going to be the 1990 NBA Finals against the Detroit Pistons. So this finals is interesting because, again, Kareem is gone. Not that he had the best, 89, but, the Lakers, maybe were due for a change. The Pistons had won the year prior. They meet the Blazers in the finals. The Blazers finally have this young rookie that they don't play as much, but in hindsight, again, if this was a video game, you got this guy, Drazen Petrovic, off the bench. You got Clifford Robinson, also a rookie. And what the Blazers also do is they come out and they win game 1. They establish themselves. They are the team of the West. They win the first game, and then the series ends 4-1. Detroit repeats as champions.
They won game 2, Jace. Sorry to say.
Game 2? I thought it was game 1.
No, they won game 2.
Oh.
Yeah. So they steal home court.
Oh.
Yeah.
Not bad on that one. Either way, they won a game.
By 1 point. So
it was
win the first game 105-99, and the Blazers win game 2 106-105.
Yeah, and then heartbreaking games. I mean, it's just tough. Again, it's just getting
really close in game 4 and 5 as well. Like very close. The Blazers lost game 4 by 3 and lose game 5 by only 2.
Yeah, and they hadn't been to the championship since their championship season. They hadn't been to the finals since the championship season. So it's been a gap. And again, this is that same core starting lineup of Terry Porter, Clyde Drexler, Jerome Kersey, Buck Williams, Kevin Duckworth.
Yep.
Kevin Duckworth was an all-star. Drexler, so close yet so far. It just not meant to be for the Blazers. And then again, hypothetically, in theory, you have Drazen Petrovic, who didn't get a lot of time on the Blazers. Then, was transitioning over from Europe, but
especially in the finals, he 7 minutes per game.
What he became with New Jersey and what he, people projected that he could become, or what he was doing overseas. It's a tough, another tough heartbreak. It's defining in the fact, though, that it did establish the Blazers as one of the elite teams in the West, which again they did become for that period. They made the finals just again in '92. So it really just kind of put the Blazers in the front pages of the NBA, of that upper echelon of teams at that time.
And they made the conference finals that next year as well.
Losing to the Lakers. That was Magic's, Magic's last go.
Last go around. And this was just another case of Clyde Drexler played very well, got good performances out of Jerome Kersey, Terry Porter, Kevin Duckworth, who, if you go and watch old Blazer games, I'm sorry to say, is like the throwback of throwback bigs. Was such a throwback. And then even in this series, he averaged, I think, 5.6 rebounds per game, which seems very low. Like Kersey and Drexler are averaging more minutes, but like around the rebound percentage. Yeah, like Clyde has a higher rebound percentage in the series than Duckworth does. And then the other thing is Duckworth not really getting you very many like steals or blocks. Isaiah Thomas, if you look at that season, hadn't necessarily been like the Pistons' best player over that season. In the finals, is just going scorched earth and has a hell of a final series. And the year before, Joe Dumars had won finals MVP. This time, Isaiah takes it home. Averages 27.6 points per game, 5.2 rebounds, 7 assists in the 5-game series. Just a great performance from him. Only shoots 16 3-pointers over the 5 games, makes 11. Like, the guy was on fire. And then his true shooting percentage was like 63%. Hell of a series from Isaiah Thomas, and obviously a guy that the Blazers didn't really have an answer for in this final series.
But I still think I do have a T-shirt from it. Did we ever – I think we also had a hat. I don't know if we still have that hat.
Yeah. I will try and find it in the archives.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Like, those are the things I'll take, like, solace in. It's like, we didn't win, but, like, at least we got something from it. But, yeah, it heartbreaking, but, you know, definitely something that was rewarding for the fans to at least make the finals and really kind of, like, put Portland in there, but obviously heartbreaking because the Blazers lost.
Yeah. And, great team again. Had a really nice few-year window, and just came up a little short.
And then number 2, we are going to go to the moment that everybody likes to talk about with the Blazers, and obviously
the big what if.
Yeah, big what if. You just watched The Last Dance as well, probably, or if you haven't, I recommend it. But luckily, they don't slag off the Blazers too much because in some Michael Jordan documentaries, they really lay into us. It's the 1984 NBA draft, and this is a very pretty deep draft. The number 1 pick is already kind of belongs to Houston, and it's pretty slotted. It's going to be Hakeem Olajuwon, center, University of Houston.
Went to University of Houston, had made it to the NCAA finals in 2 of his college seasons, and was seen as a potential franchise center.
And was, again, when Michael Jordan went off to go play baseball, he won those 2 championships. So, Hakeem, you can't, you get the number 1 pick and you draft Hakeem Olajuwon. I don't think there's, Rockets fans might have a little bit of a what if, but they can't have that much of a what if because it's like, okay, we got Hakeem Olajuwon.
Couple rings, some amazing seasons.
Yeah, he was, the best, the dream shake. Like he was a reason to come out and watch.
A great person too.
So for the number 2 pick, it belongs to the Portland Trailblazers, and there is this sort of internal, and we've asked Harry about this. I remember we went to an Oregon football game, and when you're going to University of Oregon football game, it's game day. There's a lot more traffic. So it's about, instead of being an hour and a half, hour 45, it's about a 2.5, could be, 3 hours in the car, just, by the time you get there. And our grandfather
came over early and answered a bunch of
our grandfather told us, he's like, you kids ask him anything. So we literally sat in the car, and literally before the ignition hit, we're just like, okay, 1984. Like, what happened?
Yeah. And so they had an all-star shooting guard in Jim Paxson. So they had got the 2nd pick not out of being a bad team.
Yeah.
They got it from a trade. So this was kind of, just a cherry on top, they were hoping. And in Sam Bowie, they also saw a player who, it was definitely a pick for need rather than best player available. But they saw a guy who could be a really good center. And he certainly, he had a feel for the game. It wasn't that he was a bad player. But the thing that I think kind of flummoxes people now when they go back and look at the Sam Bowie pick is between his sophomore season in college at University of Kentucky to his junior season, Sam Bowie missed 2 full years. So he was 19 as a sophomore. As a junior, he was 22. and I guess probably had to leave for the draft because, his clock had run out. Maybe he could have gotten a 6th year. I'm not sure. But he misses 2 full seasons with knee issues. And the way that they seem to go about it, or at least the way that it's explained, is a doctor cleared Sam Bowie and said, he was okay. It sounded like they used one of those reflex hammers, banged it on his knee, goes, "Does this hurt?" And Sam goes, "No, I'm good." And then, at least from what I think Sam Bowie said, he goes, "Of course it hurt, but I'm not going to say that."
Yeah.
Why would he say anything differently? So, yeah.
I think for the Blazers, they also were pushing to get Patrick Ewing to come out in the draft.
That would have been, and that's another huge what if for the Blazers. Patrick Ewing was seen, he had just won against Hakeem Olajuwon in the NCAA tournament championship. So it was the huge battle of the big men with Houston and Georgetown. Hakeem, I saw, had like the slightly better statistical numbers. Ewing's team won. But Ewing was seen as like the next Bill Russell. Like that was the huge deal with the 1985 draft, is people thought Patrick Ewing, wherever he was going, championships were following. He had, just great skills considering he was 7 foot with this incredible frame as well.
No, and I think when he found out that they're having the next year, they're having a lottery and it was going to be rigged and he'd be a part of that history.
That was the hope. He wanted to go to New York that bad.
No, I think Ewing, I know they
New York, Portland. I choose Portland, but
you talk about pushing for that, but of course, and again, the NBA is so different at the time. I think the curse of the Blazers was ever since Bill Walton left, they were looking for who's the next Bill Walton.
Yeah,
it's not who's the next great player for the Blazers, like a shooting guard or anything. It's like who's the next big guy. That's because the NBA at that time was so. It builds from the big man.
Yeah, so many championship teams were built around big guys. That's used to be seen as the formula. You have Bill Russell, you have all these big guys that had,
won the championship.
It was defense. It was, these huge post defenders who could just do a little bit of everything. You could run your offense through them. Just seen as a huge matchup issue as well. And Sam Bowie was I don't know, I'd like to have somebody on to kind of give us more insight into exactly what the thought of Sam Bowie was at the time, but I think it was a bit of a surprise. Like I'll say that, like it wasn't like Sam Bowie was expected to go number 2.
No, totally.
And I think people knew that Michael Jordan certainly was a talent, but I'm guessing at the time people weren't like, oh my God, it's like the end of the world. But they felt that way pretty quickly when Michael Jordan was in the Olympics and looking absolutely fantastic, and then just storms onto the NBA.
And Bowie, you look at the career statistics. Like, I mean, his third year, 86-87, he got 16 points a game, 16 points, 2 blocks. So it's not like he was he was the worst player to ever step on the court. He just was someone that, obviously had a very, very difficult 16 points in 5 games.
Yeah, that was the next thing I was going to say.
But like he
played 43 games in his second and third year combined, and then missed a year.
Yeah, he has 1 year for New Jersey, 89-90. He plays 68 games, he gets 14. So it's not like he was the worst player. Again, it's that injury thing. And
Michael Jordan.
And it's Michael. I know it's Michael Jordan.
Sometimes it's who you're drafted ahead of. And
totally.
Michael Jordan was drafted ahead of Kevin Durant. Sam Bowie was drafted ahead of him.
Yeah, and the Blazers thought they had their backcourt set.
Yeah, well, they loved Clyde Drexler. Like he didn't necessarily have incredible numbers as a rookie, but they loved Clyde Drexler. They made it to the second round. Like they were legitimately a good team, and they thought they were a center away from being this competitive.
Yeah, but that's what hurts. That's what hurts them even more. Is like they did have a good year before, so this was kind of like that luxury pick that you're like, oh, let's get someone in our team who becomes super stacked. We have that like that super difference maker guy now. We made the second round. Now we add somebody else. But yeah, so that's the heartbreak of that 84 draft. Obviously, like it's been examined before by a lot of different media outlets and places talking about it. And it's just kind of been that curse of the Blazers is like they could have had Michael Jordan.
Yeah. Oh, so they had lost in the first round the year before, but they were 48-34. Second in the Pacific Division. They actually do make it to the second round in Sam Bowie's rookie year before losing to the Lakers, who, as we all know, were the cream of the crop in the Western Conference during the entire 1980s.
So before we get into number one, let's go through a few honorable mentions. So these are things that did not make the list, but if there's any Blazer moments that, really defined your fandom or love or hatred of the Blazers, definitely let us know in the comment section. I will say, so for me, honorable mentions, I got the 1986 NBA draft is an interesting one at the time because the Blazers did something that was very non-traditional with two of their picks, and they drafted guys from overseas. A couple of whom didn't come over for a few years. So in the third round with the 60th pick, they had 3 rounds, but they had more than that, but they had a ton of rounds. Drazen Petrovic doesn't come over till 89-90, but again,
what a pick.
What a pick with, the third round. And then with the 24th pick in the first round, they take a guy out of the USSR, later Lithuania, Arvydas Sabonis. Doesn't come over for 10 years.
Yeah.
So the Blazers, it's like one of those tough things again with the Blazers because we did get Sabonis later, 10 years later, he does come to Portland.
He was a draft and super stash.
Yeah. He's a great player. Physically we never got him at his physical prime. But I
think he had like plenty of injuries as well up to that point. But then comes over and is like a starting center on good teams for like
as a 31-year-old rookie, he played it out as
runner up to Damian Stoudemire for rookie of the year, and that was the 90. Oh, so yeah, it was the year before the 96 draft, but still, it was Damian Stoudemire, Kevin Garnett, Rasheed Wallace. The picks from that draft were really good.
It was pretty.
And Arvydas looked like the second best rookie at least.
Yeah, so that's one. I'd say 1995. Middle of the season, Clyde Drexler's unhappy. They trade him. I think that's a defining moment to me in just the fact that it really blew up the core where eventually all those other guys, Terry Porter, Duckworth was already out of the picture, but, Buck Williams, Terry Porter, Jerome Kersey, all go their separate ways. Clyde gets traded. That's kind of the end of that era.
Yeah. Well, did you see recently that George Karl had posted a picture also of Clyde wearing a Sonics uniform? And they were talking about how that might have been the trade.
No, I did not see that. That would have been heartbreaking.
Yeah. Oh, God. Yeah. I think it's seeing him go to Houston and playing with his college teammate, Hakeem Olajuwon, and going back to where he was from. Like, Clyde's a Houston guy. And so that was kind of cool to see. Trading him to the Seattle Supersonics, on the other hand, would have been a tough pill to swallow, especially since Bob Whitsett's like such a Seattle guy.
The Blazers, like 95.
Michael Ainge situation.
Clyde wasn't down for a rebuild.
Yeah.
The Blazers kind of floundered until for a few years while they were trading pieces. And then the last thing to me is another. This is going to be our, we promise, last sad note. Brandon Roy's retirement.
Mm-hmm.
That's up there just because it was so. Yeah, he was a young man with the body of a much older player, unfortunately, and it just like he had to step away. But it's because of everything works itself out. There's if we keep Brandon Roy, does Damian Lillard do what he does? So fine with how everything worked out. But yeah, Brandon Roy's retirement is definitely something that's pretty sad because he was someone that like we had so much hope.
It was sad seeing him in a Minnesota Timberwolves jersey.
That was super sad too, but that didn't like go very.
You felt like good that he, was still trying to play, but yeah, it was It was sad that he just didn't end his career with the Blazers.
Yeah, with the Blazers and
having a much longer career
in the way that he wanted to. It's just like he would have. It's not that he mentally was checked out.
Going out on his own terms rather than
physically couldn't go, and that's just the worst way to go. So that's our last. We promise no more down notes for the Blazers. We're going out on a high note. Number one moment. Drum roll, please. 1977 NBA champions.
Yeah. Spirit of 77, baby.
Spirit of 77, Dr. Jack. It's such a thing we still, like, obviously we're not alive for, but I still reference it like it's like a current part of my life. Like I talk about the championship team, the championship. Like I was watching on NBA TV, they've been playing all these old games. Like I watched part of the championship the other day. It's just so exciting. I mean, 7 years into the league to become champions, especially in a league like the NBA where most teams don't win championships. Most teams don't make the finals. Like you look at it, it's a pretty much you see a lot of the same teams in this. So yeah, for the Blazers to win it, and really, the Blazers at this time were led by Bill Walton. And the big thing with Bill Walton is he was an incredibly great player, often injured. So that was the hardest thing. And this was really the year that he was his healthiest.
Yeah, definitely in a Blazer uniform, for sure. He, yeah, and I think they were just like a completely different team with him on the floor. Like you look at that year, and they weren't like a dominant regular season team. Though I think there was a lot more parity back then. But yeah, they were 49-33. They end up the really cool thing about this championship run. Well, there are lots of cool things, but the Blazers were the first team that came back from being down 2-0. And like that wasn't something that had happened before, where a team was down 2-0 and they come back and win the series in 6 games.
And hey, against Dr. J.
Yeah. Well, and this was the merger too. So this was the season where the NBA and the ABA had finally merged, and the Blazers get a huge helping hand with the addition of Maurice Lucas. And that was a large part of it, but definitely was like Bill Walton's group. And he was just such a great player, could really like do it all. And he was an amazing defensive presence, like monster on the boards. And then, he could score, but he didn't need to score to dominate because he was such a phenomenal passer as well. So you could run your offense through him.
Well, that's what he was.
He could do so many things.
That type of big, like that. As much as we hear Bill Walton as a commentator, we kind of want to pull our hair out. It's like when you mute the television and watch his highlights, like he was a great player, and he was doing a lot of things that no other big guys had done at that time.
Yeah, just listen to Bill Walton's 6-game series against Philadelphia. 18.5 points per game. 19 rebounds per game, 5.2 assists per game, 3.7 blocks per game, 54.5% from the field, 78.9 from the line. And then just like a really balanced team effort as well. And then, you have Dr. J averaging 30 a game. He was amazing. Like, Julius Erving was that guy at the time. Like, he was just – you had – Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was likely the preeminent player in basketball over, the next like decade or so, even after that. But yeah, Dr. J is somebody who had dominated the ABA, comes to the NBA, and already leads the team to the championship, and just ended up getting beat out by the Blazers.
Yeah, and just what a moment. Yeah, it's just like it's just such a sense of pride for the city that they did this. I mean, again, Bill Walton, not the had, didn't leave Portland on the best of terms, but you know what? Like, people erase that pretty quickly when his name gets brought up. Maurice Lucas, still a legend in town. I mean, a lot of the guys, Lionel Hollins, Dave Twardzik, just, just a solid team, and they did it. It's just sad they never got to do it again, because again, Walton doesn't stay healthy to really allow for that. Because it all kind of hinges on him.
Oh yeah. And they're a completely different team. And the next year, regular season wise, they were a better team.
Yeah, but the next year was his last year in Portland.
Yeah, wins the 1978 MVP award, fewest games ever in a season, not lockout shortened, for an MVP, and almost the fewest games just in general for an MVP. But he plays 58 games. The Blazers go 48-10 in those games and finish the year with a 58-24 record. So they go 10-14 without Bill Walton.
Yeah.
He
was such a...
He took them to that next level.
Well, that's why 75-76 was a similar thing where the Blazers were on the right path. Walton goes down, and then down go the Blazers. So he was so impactful there. But yeah, that 77 was just... It's awesome. It's something, the Blazers, they did it. They won the championship. It's just one of those sad things of like, when can we do this again?
Oh God. And then you look at like his analytic numbers, like he played 2 games in the series they eventually lost to the Supersonics in 1978, and he was killing it. Like, he was really good. He was just so good. And yeah, it's just an absolute shame. He comes back later and plays with the amazing, like, I guess it was the 86 Celtics.
Yeah, he plays for the Celtics. Well, because he plays for the Clippers, and then he like sits out a couple years. There's 2 years he doesn't play for anybody.
Yeah.
And then he comes like,
they won the 6th Man of the Year in 1986, and yeah, just that's seen as one of the best teams of all time. And the 77 team. If you get a chance, I always say, if you get a chance, watch some of those games in 1977. Watch Bill Walton. Be amazed. And I compare it to like if Nikola Jokic could play like defense at a really high level and like rim protect, like almost like the Dikembe Mutombo, like, geez. Yeah, Bill Walton was that dude. Like, he's really good.
That's what curses the Blazers, because the Blazers keep searching for Bill Walton.
But at the same time, I'm sorry, Knicks fans, the Blazers had almost as many championships as you guys, and you had a huge head start.
Take of that. But so those are our 10 franchise-defining moments of the Blazers. Again, if you are a Blazers fan, if you hate the Blazers, if you just want to say something, comment section would be the place I would do that. If there are any things you think we missed or any things you just want to reminisce about, be them good or bad, what was like your favorite game that you went to?
Yeah. Tell us some high-scoring moments, maybe, as far as games you went to. If you were at the game where Damian scored 59 points against Utah, and if you were at any of those great Blazers playoff games. I know I got a chance to go to Game 3 of the Blazers Nuggets second round series last year, and it was the 4 overtime game, and unforgettable. So yeah, lots of great moments watching the Trailblazers. Still a very fun team. We're hoping the best as far as their health is concerned, and just also huge shout out to Harry Glickman. Was always just wonderful to us. I had a chance to play poker with him a few times with my grandfather and his poker buddies, and was just so gracious. Was really gracious with his time. I know a few things with Harry. He loved Rudy Fernandez. He thought Rudy Fernandez was going to be this giant star, and I think to an extent he was, because if you looked at the Blazers crowd when Rudy Fernandez was playing there were tons of people wearing Rudy Fernandez jerseys. He was so much fun to watch. And
Well, and Harry took the chance on some. He brought in some overseas guys when people weren't. So that was pretty at the time. I will say we were also privileged enough a few times he had courtside seats, and he would go to the desert during the winter, and he did give us our seats, but I was lucky. I got to watch a lot of games from those seats. They're amazing. Michael, on the other hand, went to a game, and he showed, because he's the founder of the team, you don't need tickets, and he showed up and actually bumped Michael out. But
yeah, it was a game the Blazers lost to the Cleveland Cavaliers. It's one of LeBron James' actual buzzer beaters. You walk-off buzzer beater. And went with my friend. Like, we're going to sit courtside.
Yeah.
We ended up saying fifth row. Not the end of the week.
Not bad. And, it used to be fun with those seats because we'd get them, and Michael and I would go like 40 hours early to watch everybody warm up. And it's like, that's always my favorite thing, just to see like that process for a lot of those NBA guys. So.
Amazing. And we wouldn't have had the chance without Harry. Yeah. Just thank you, Harry, for everything you did for the Portland Trailblazers in general. Thank you for seeing Portland as a place to have an NBA franchise and still going strong. So yeah, definitely Harry Glickman is somebody in our thoughts, and the best to his family and everybody that loved Harry Glickman, and the best to Blazers fans in Rip City as we're going through this time. And rest in peace, Harry.
Yeah. And if you guys like this episode, definitely at the end, don't forget, give us a thumbs up. Also, subscribe to Viseland. We're doing new episodes that come out every Wednesday. So we're on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud. If there's any ideas that you have or thoughts, you can definitely leave those in the comments section. You can also email us, viselandpod@gmail.com, or you can find us on Twitter @Viseland. Thank you guys so much.